welcome. So I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, unless you're driving, obviously.
Yeah, please keep your eyes open if you're behind the wheel.
Right, please do. But otherwise, I want you to put yourself in a really specific scenario. And I'm willing to bet this is going to feel uncomfortably familiar for a lot of you.
Oh, I already know where this is going.
You probably do. So you're standing in a bustling cafe, or maybe you're at this international networking event, right? And you're holding a lukewarm cup of coffee.
The classic awkward networking coffee.
Exactly. And you've spent months, maybe even years, just diligently studying English. You've got all the apps on your phone. You've memorized those long, color-coded lists of vocabulary.
So the flashcards. Thousands of them.
Yes, the endless flashcards. You've passed the grammar exams. You've put in the hard, undeniable work. And then a native speaker walks up to you, gives you a friendly smile, and asks this incredibly simple question, like, so what did you do yesterday?
And then the physiological response just hits you like a truck.
It really does.
Your heart rate spikes. Cortisol just floods your entire system.
Yes. Suddenly, it's just white noise.
Yeah.
Your mind goes completely blank. You just freeze up.
Total paralysis.
Right. And you know the words are in your head somewhere. I mean, you can literally picture the textbook page that you studied them on.
You can see the highlight color.
Exactly. But the pathway from your brain to your vocal cords is just suddenly barricaded. The words refuse to come out of your mouth, and you end up stammering out like a one-word answer and basically looking for the nearest exit.
It is a universally agonizing feeling. It's that sense of being trapped inside your own head, you know?
It's awful.
Because you possess the language, you know you do. But the bridge between your passive knowledge and your active speech just instantaneously collapses under the pressure of a real-time interaction.
It's so frustrating.
It really is. It leaves learners feeling incredibly discouraged. It makes them think they just don't have the talent for languages.
Which is a complete myth, by the way. So if you have ever felt that specific brand of panic, I really want to assure you right now that you are in exactly the right place.
Absolutely.
Today, we're going deep into a topic that is going to fundamentally dismantle and then rebuild how you approach spoken English. We are looking at a revolutionary framework for fluency.
And it really is a total paradigm shift.
It is. The mission of today's deep dive is to show you a surprising, honestly counterintuitive path that completely bypasses all of that anxiety. We're going to explore a premise that might sound a little bit like snake oil at first glance.
I completely understand why people are skeptical when they first encounter this data. I mean, we are so conditioned to believe that language learning is purely an act of massive volume acquisition.
Right, like whoever has the most words wins.
Exactly, just cramming the dictionary into your brain.
But here is the massive paradigm shift we're talking about today. You do not need to memorize thousands upon thousands of esoteric words to speak fluently.
You really don't.
In fact, true fluency, that elusive feeling of natural, comfortable, unforced speaking, actually stems from mastering a surprisingly tiny pool of language. We're talking about just 300 to 1,000 core words.
That is the incredibly potent magic window. Just 300 to 1,000 words.
Sounds crazy, right?
It does. But what we're going to explore today is the science of why knowing a fraction of the dictionary, but knowing it with absolute reflexive depth, is infinitely more powerful than having a massive superficial vocabulary that only exists on your flashcards.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we need to look at the hard numbers. The statistical reality of how humans actually communicate is staggering.
It's fascinating.
When linguists analyze massive databases of spoken English, so we're talking transcripts of phone calls, television shows, daily conversations, they find something called Zipf's law in action.
Right, Zipf's law.
And the data overwhelmingly shows that the 300 most frequently used English words account for roughly 65% of everything we say in everyday conversations.
Just think about the gravity of that for a second.
It's wild. 65% of your daily communication needs are met by just 300 words. And if you push that boundary just a little further, up to the top 1,000 words, you are covering nearly 90% of daily spoken English.
That completely upends the traditional classroom model, doesn't it?
It shatters it.
If a mere 1,000 words grant you 90% of your communicative power, it means that the vast majority of the mental energy learners expend is Basically wasted.
Yeah, grinding through complex vocabulary lists.
Right, trying to memorize obscure adverbs. It's yielding severely diminishing returns. They are working incredibly hard for that final 10% at the expense of mastering the crucial 90%.
Okay, I have to pause and push back on this, though.
Yeah,
On behalf of the listener who has a massive stack of flashcards on their desk right now,
fair enough.
because intuitively this feels wrong. If I want to read a medical journal, or if I want to understand a highly nuanced piece of classic literature, 300 words is definitely not going to cut it.
No, it won't.
Isn't a massive vocabulary the ultimate hallmark of an advanced speaker? Doesn't knowing 10,000 words objectively make you better at the language?
That is the most common and logical objection. It really is. But to answer it, we have to split the concept of vocabulary entirely in half.
Okay, split it how?
We have to differentiate between your receptive vocabulary and your productive vocabulary. What you're talking about, reading a medical journal, listening to a complex university lecture that relies on receptive vocabulary.
Ah, okay, the passive stuff.
Yes. You absolutely need volume to passively consume complex media. But speaking is productive. And when it comes to production, the rules change entirely. This brings us to the critical difference between knowing a word and owning a word.
Knowing versus owning. Okay, let's break that.
Let's use a physical analogy. Imagine you have a massive industrial-sized toolbox sitting in your garage.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And it contains 10,000 highly specialized complex tools, a pneumatic torque wrench, a laser level, a specialized coping saw.
Sounds expensive.
Right. You can walk into the garage, look at them and name them. You know what they are. You might even know what they're theoretically used for. But if you have never actually practiced holding them, if your hand doesn't know the specific grip required, if you don't understand the physical weight of the tool or the exact angle to strike, you cannot build a house.
Right, because I have no practical experience with them.
Exactly. Having the tools sitting in the box does not make you a builder.
I totally see where you're going with this.
Mm-hmm.
The passive recognition is completely detached from the physical execution. The tools are essentially useless if I lack the muscle memory to actually swing the hammer.
It's all about quality over quantity. The learner sitting there with 10,000 words they only recognize on a multiple choice test is just staring at an incredibly heavy toolbox.
They have a huge inventory.
But zero application skills. But the learner with just 300 words who truly owns them. They know the weight of those words. They know how to bend them, combine them, and deploy them under pressure.
They're out there building things every single day.
Exactly. Let's ground this in a very practical linguistic example. Let's look at the bet family.
Oh man, the dreaded get. It's one of those words that haunts every English learner because it seems to mean absolutely everything and absolutely nothing at the exact same time.
It really does. Almost every single person studying English knows the word get. You encounter it in, week one of any curriculum.
Yeah, very early on.
But ask yourself, do you own it? Can you automatically, reflexively use it in a rapid-fire conversation without pausing to mentally translate from your native language?
That's the real test.
Because think about how native speakers actually deploy this single tool. In the morning, we don't say, I awaken, we say, I get up. We don't prepare for work, we get ready.
Right. And as the day goes on, we don't experience fatigue, we get tired. If we lose our sense of direction, we don't become disoriented, we get lost.
Exactly. If we catch a cold, we wait to get better. If we have a good relationship with a colleague, we get along.
Let me just process that for a second. Get up, get ready, get tired, get lost, get better, get along.
So versatile.
By deeply mastering just that one incredibly basic root word and then just attaching simple prepositions or adjectives to it, I am essentially bypassing the need to memorize 6 entirely different, highly formal verbs.
That's the secret.
That changes the entire return on investment of a vocabulary word.
Precisely. If you truly own get, you do not need to retrieve awaken, prepare, fatigue, disorient, recover, or harmonize while you're trying to speak.
You'd sound like a robot if you used all those anyway.
You really would. You're taking one simple, lightweight tool from your box, and you've learned how to pivot it to solve 20 different structural problems. That is what we mean by depth.
It's efficiency. And this maps perfectly onto the Pareto principle, the famous 80-20 rule from economics.
Oh, absolutely.
The idea that 80% of your outcomes are driven by just 20% of your inputs. In language learning, this 300 to 1,000 word core is that vital 20% effort that unlocks the vast majority of your conversational ability.
It totally does. And I want to give the listener a practical spoken chunk right here.
Oh, yeah.
Because a huge part of fluency is learning how to explain concepts smoothly.
Oh, I love actionable chunks. Let's do it.
Let's say you, the listener, want to explain this exact 80-20 concept to a friend. Often, learners will rely on a very blunt, unpolished sentence like, "This topic is difficult."
Yeah, very textbook.
Let's upgrade that together into something a native speaker would naturally say to buy themselves time to think.
Okay, what is the upgrade?
Instead of just saying, "This topic is difficult," practice using this exact phrasing. This topic feels difficult at first, but it becomes easier when you explain it with simple examples.
Let me say that again so you can really catch the cadence of it. This topic feels difficult at first, but it becomes easier when you explain it with simple examples.
Notice the rhythm there.
Yeah, there's a rhythm to that. It flows.
And notice the psychological effect of using a chunk like that. The words themselves are incredibly basic. Topic, difficult, easier, simple examples.
Every learner knows those words.
Exactly. But when you string them together in that specific flowing sequence, you instantly sound sophisticated. You sound fluent.
So we've thoroughly established the why. The volume myth is totally busted. We know that to speak effectively, we need to ruthlessly prioritize depth over breadth.
Right.
But this naturally begs the question of mechanics. If I'm the learner, and I accept that I only need this small core set of 300 to 1,000 words, how do I actually map them into my brain?
That is the big question.
How do I transition a word from that passive knowing toolbox into the active owning muscle memory?
This is where we introduce a very deliberate four-step engine for deep learning. This is the practical roadmap to ownership. And step one is the foundational filter. We call it personalizing core vocabulary.
Personalizing it, because logically, a generic list of the 300 most common words is going to have variations depending on who's actually speaking, right?
Absolutely. Now, the absolute bedrock is universal. Words like the, and, because, go, make, have, those are non-negotiable structural pillars.
Yeah, everyone needs those.
Everyone needs them. But very quickly, your core vocabulary must branch off and mold itself to the contours of your specific daily life.
Because the brain is a highly efficient machine, right?
Yeah.
And it actively discards information it deems irrelevant to survival or just daily functioning.
Exactly. It is literally an evolutionary mechanism. If you are a university student, your personalized core words absolutely must include homework, assignment, deadline, lecture, professor. That is your daily reality.
Makes sense.
But if you're a logistics manager at a shipping company, spending hours memorizing academic vocabulary is actively working against your brain's natural filtering system.
Your brain will just reject it.
It will. Your core needs to be shipment, delay, invoice, route, client.
This highlights a huge mistake I think a lot of us make. We download a generic top 10,000 word deck for an app, and we force ourselves to learn words like photosynthesis or archipelago when we haven't even mastered the words necessary to describe what we do for a living.
It's so backwards.
The words simply won't stick unless there is an emotional or practical anchor tying them to our actual lived experience.
They won't stick at all. Which brings us seamlessly to step 2 of the engine. Never learn a word alone.
Context is key.
Context is the glue of memory.
Never alone. Okay, let's contrast this with the traditional way we are all taught in school.
Yeah.
The classic flashcard model. You have a piece of cardboard. On the front, you write the English verb arrive.
Right.
And on the back, you write the translation in your native language, or maybe a sterile dictionary definition like to reach a place.
That is the ultimate weak method. It completely strips the word of its ecological environment. Words do not exist in a vacuum. They exist in relation to other words.
They need friends.
Exactly. When you isolate arrive, you are starving your brain of the associative links it needs to retrieve that word later. The strong method, the method that actually builds neural pathways, is to learn the target word embedded inside a full, living, breathing sentence.
So I'm not learning arrive. I'm learning the entire unit. Like I usually arrive at work at 9 a.m.
Precisely. Look at how much heavy lifting that one sentence does. You aren't just learning the definition of arrive. You're absorbing the crucial preposition at, which learners constantly mess up.
Oh, in, on, at.
Uh,
The struggle is real.
it's the worst. But in that sentence, you also absorb the adverb usually and its correct placement right before the verb. You're feeling the rhythmic stress of the sentence.
That's a lot of passive learning.
And most importantly, you are mentally visualizing your own office building and the clock striking 9. You're tying the language to a visual and spatial memory.
And there's a physical component to this as well, isn't there? You can't just read that sentence silently in your head.
I am so glad you brought that up because this is a crucial pronunciation clarity reminder for everyone listening. When you build these contextual sentences, you must vocalize them, say them out loud.
Yes, so important.
Ideally, record yourself on your phone. And look, I know for a fact that listening to a recording of your own voice is a mildly excruciating experience for most people.
Oh, it's terrible. We hear ourselves through bone conduction in our own heads, so when we hear the air conduction recording, it sounds all high-pitched and strange. We hate it.
Everyone hates it, but you have to push past that discomfort. The goal here is not to develop a flawless Hollywood native accent.
Right.
The goal is physical clarity and mechanical comfort. Speech is a motor skill, just like playing the piano. You need to feel the physical movement of your jaw, your lips, and your tongue navigating the transitions between the words.
The physical mechanics.
Exactly. I usually arrive at work at 9 a.m. You say it out loud 10 times until the physical act of producing those sounds feels utterly frictionless.
You're building literal muscle memory in your vocal tract. That makes total sense. Which leads us to step 3,
Yes.
connecting blocks.
Yes, the building blocks.
How do we take these sentences and scale them up without just completely overwhelming the working memory?
I like to visualize this step as playing with building blocks like Legos. When you try to memorize a massive, complex paragraph all at once, your cognitive load maxes out and you panic.
You just freeze.
So we start with simple, solid blocks that you already know intimately. Words like go, work, early, traffic, you own all of these. Now we just click them together into a structurally sound base. I go to work early because of traffic.
It's a clean, completely natural sentence. No complex grammar rules required to assemble it, just logic.
Right. Now, we expand the architecture. We introduce 1 or 2 new blocks to the existing structure. Let's say your new vocabulary words for the day are train and cheaper.
Okay.
You don't build a new sentence from scratch, you just bolt them onto what you already have. I go to work early because the train ticket is cheaper.
I really love the psychology of this. You didn't force your brain to synthesize a massive new concept. You just swapped out a block.
Exactly.
It completely defangs the fear of speaking in long sentences, because you suddenly realize that a long, impressive sentence is really just 2 or 3 very short, simple blocks clicked together with a conjunction.
Exactly. You are managing your cognitive load. And when you practice building language this way, you naturally graduate to step 4, which is arguably the most powerful synthesis technique of all, the weekly life story.
The Workley life story. Okay, so instead of writing essays on abstract topics, the practice here is writing a brief narrative, just maybe 4 or 5 sentences, using strictly your core words to describe an actual episodic memory from your week.
Right. It utilizes episodic memory, which is much stickier than semantic memory. It doesn't need to be a thrilling adventure. It could be wonderfully mundane.
Give me an example.
Okay, like yesterday, I went to the supermarket, I bought fruit and fresh bread, I walked home in the rain, I cooked dinner with my family. It was a very peaceful evening.
You know, when you say it like that, it sounds almost too rudimentary. A learner might think, I sound like a kindergartner.
They do worry about that.
But if you actually eavesdropped on native speakers talking by the water cooler on a Monday morning, that is exactly how they speak. We don't use poetic, labyrinthine grammar to recount buying groceries. We use short, punchy, direct blocks.
We value clarity over complexity, always. In fact, let's do a quick role play to demonstrate how leaning into complexity actually damages communication.
Oh, fun. Let's do it.
I want you to play the part of an incredibly stressed learner who is trying to explain this 4-step method to a colleague, but you're trying to use overly advanced textbook vocabulary to sound smart.
Challenge accepted. Okay, let me get into character. Clears throat, adjusts invisible glasses.
Oh, yes.
The methodology of the aforementioned 4-step vocabulary acquisition process necessitates the contextualization of individual lexicons within a highly personalized autobiographical framework.
Like freeze right there. That is phenomenally dense.
It hurt my brain to say it.
If you spoke like that at a casual networking event, the person listening to you would be deeply confused. They'd probably assume you were reading from a teleprompter.
Definitely.
You are working so hard to sound intelligent that you've completely sacrificed connection. Let's strip away the pretense and upgrade that explanation into simple, highly effective English.
Okay, how do I fix it?
I want you to use this specific conversational chunk to start. The simple way to think about it is, try delivering the same idea using that chunk in your basic blocks.
Okay, let me pivot. The simple way to think about it is you choose words you actually use every day, you put them in full sentences, and you use them to tell simple stories about your life.
Flawless. Now analyze the difference. Which one sounded more confident?
Oh, definitely the second one. I didn't have to pause to search for words like contextualization. It was warm, it was immediate, and the listener would instantly grasp the concept.
And that is the paradox of fluency. Using simpler words makes you sound more fluent because your delivery is unbroken.
Wow, yeah.
And here's another fantastic chunk the listener can steal for these situations. What that means in real life is.
Ooh, I like that.
When you use chunks like the simple way to think about it is, or what that means in real life is, you're doing two things. You're signaling to the listener that you're about to clarify a point, and you're buying your brain a crucial 2 seconds to assemble your next building blocks without an awkward silence.
What that means in real life is. That is a phenomenal tool. Okay, so we have the 4-step engine. We understand personalization, context, building blocks, and narrative. We know how to process the language.
Yes, the mechanics are set.
But we have to address the giant elephant in the room. Human behavior. Because the graveyard of language learning is full of people who understand the method, but they sit down on a Sunday afternoon to study for 3 hours straight. They hit a massive wall of mental fatigue, and they quit entirely by Tuesday.
We see it all the time.
So how do we translate this engine into a sustainable long-term habit?
This is where we shift our focus from the mechanics of what we learn to the neuroscience of when and how often we learn. The antidote to burnout is the 15-minute daily routine.
Just 15 minutes.
You do not need 2 hours of grinding study. In fact, neuroscience tells us that a 2-hour block is likely detrimental due to a phenomenon called cognitive overload.
Really?
Yeah,
Detrimental?
Yes. Your brain literally stops encoding new information after a certain point. You only need 15 minutes a day, aggressively fragmented into microsessions.
I love the idea of micro-sessions. Let's meticulously map out this schedule for the listener so they can implement it tomorrow. How exactly do we carve up 15 minutes?
It is brilliantly low friction. Let's begin with the morning phase. Just 5 minutes, no heavy lifting.
Okay, what am I doing?
While you're brewing your coffee, or while you're standing at the sink brushing your teeth, you simply review yesterday's sentences out loud. You don't learn anything new.
So it's just a warm-up.
Exactly. You just vocalize the blocks you already built. You're waking up your articulatory system and gently pinging your memory.
5 minutes in the morning. That is 0 extra time added to the day because you are habit stacking it with making coffee. Brilliant. Moving to the afternoon.
Afternoon phase, another 5 minutes. This is for passive input with active filtering.
Active filtering, what does that mean?
While you're commuting or eating lunch, listen to an audio deep dive like the one we're doing right now, or watch a short YouTube vlog. But you don't just let the sound wash over you passively. You become a hunter.
A hunter. I like that.
You actively listen for the specific core words you are currently acquiring. When you hear the speaker naturally use get ready or arrive or deadline, your brain lights up. You are confirming the context in the wild.
You are seeking validation for the tools you're learning. It turns listening into a game. And finally, the evening phase.
Evening phase, the final 5 minutes. You execute step 4. You tell a 1-minute story about your day out loud using your core words. I finished my project at 5. I took the train home. I feel tired, but I had a productive day. You summarize, vocalize, and then you are done.
Morning review. Afternoon hunting. Evening story. 15 minutes total. Now, I have to admit, my skeptical brain is flagging this.
It sounds too easy.
It feels suspiciously easy. If I'm only doing 5-minute bursts, am I really learning? Why does this microspacing work better than, say, a highly disciplined 2-hour session on Saturday morning?
To understand why it works, we have to look under the hood at the neuroplasticity of the brain. When you practice a physical or cognitive skill, in short, highly consistent daily bursts, you are engaging in something called spaced repetition.
Okay, spaced repetition.
You're actively building and reinforcing what neurologists call neural pathways. Let's use an analogy. Imagine a massive, solid block of stone, and you want to carve a deep canyon into it.
Okay, I'm picturing a canyon, like the Grand Canyon.
If you take a fire hose and blast the stone with an incredible volume of water for 2 hours on a Sunday and then turn it off for the rest of the week, what happens?
Not much. The water splashes everywhere. Maybe it scuffs the surface a bit, but it quickly evaporates.
Exactly. No canyon is formed. That is your 2-hour cram session.
Oh.
But if you take a small, steady stream of water and you let it flow over the exact same groove in the stone, day after day, week after week,
It carves it out.
yes, that persistent, repeated flow eventually carves a deep, permanent riverbed. The water has no choice but to flow down that path.
That is a phenomenal visual. The consistency is what carves the groove, not the sheer volume of the water.
Exactly. The first time you try to construct a sentence in English, your brain is like water hitting flat stone. It scatters, it struggles to find a direction. It's mentally exhausting because you're searching for the vocabulary, checking the syntax, worrying about the pronunciation.
It's a lot of friction.
But when you do your 5-minute bursts every single day, you are carving that neural riverbed. A process called myelination occurs. It literally insulates the nerve fibers, making the electrical signals travel faster. After a month, the sentence flows automatically down the carved pathway.
This connects so perfectly to the concept of working memory. It's like learning to drive a manual transmission car.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Let's go deeper into that. Think about the cognitive load. On day one of driving school, your working memory is entirely consumed by the physical operations.
You're sweating just trying to steer.
Right. You're consciously managing the clutch pedal, the stick shift, the mirrors, the blind spots. If the instructor asks you a simple question like, "What did you have for breakfast?" and you might stall the car because your brain literally does not have the processing power to answer a question and shift gears simultaneously.
That is a perfect articulation of cognitive overload. Your working memory is maxed out just handling the base mechanics.
But flash forward a year. You're driving down the highway, shifting gears, changing lanes, adjusting the radio, and having a deep philosophical debate with your passenger.
You don't even remember the drive.
Exactly. The mechanical act of driving has been moved out of your conscious working memory and into your automatic subconscious procedural memory. You aren't thinking about driving anymore. You're thinking about your destination.
And that is the ultimate definition of linguistic fluency. Fluency is not the encyclopedic knowledge of every word in the dictionary. Fluency is achieved when the structural mechanics of the language, the grammar, the syntax, the core vocabulary become so heavily myelinated, so deeply carved that they run on autopilot.
It frees up your brain.
Yes, it frees up 100% of your working memory to focus entirely on the message you want to convey and the human connection you are trying to build.
And beyond the structural changes in the brain, there is a powerful neurochemical element to this 15-minute routine as well, specifically regarding motivation, right?
Absolutely. We have to talk about the dopamine loop.
The dopamine loop.
Dopamine is often misunderstood just as the pleasure chemical, but it's really the motivation and reward prediction chemical.
Interesting.
When you set a massive, ambiguous goal like, I am going to study English grammar for 3 hours today, and you inevitably abandon it after 45 minutes because your brain is fried, you experience a dopamine crash.
You feel like a failure.
Your brain registers a failure, it associates English with fatigue and guilt, and your motivation for tomorrow absolutely plummets.
You train yourself to hate the process.
Precisely. But when you set a microscopic, highly achievable goal, I am going to spend exactly 3 minutes saying my 5 core sentences out loud while the shower water warms up, and you execute it, your brain registers a definitive win.
It's a clear victory.
It releases a pulse of dopamine. That dopamine essentially acts as a chemical tag that says, that felt good, that was successful, let's do exactly that again tomorrow. You shift your entire psychological relationship with the language from a state of anxious dread to a state of rewarding momentum.
Micro wins driving macro consistency.
Yeah.
It is brilliant. So we've dissected the brain science, we have built the 15-minute behavioral routine, and we understand the mechanics of neural pathways. Let's bring this theoretical framework right down to the pavement.
Let's do it.
Let's apply this to the messy, unpredictable real world. Because the ultimate test is what actually happens when we step out of our apartment and open our mouths to speak to another human being.
This is the proving ground, and this is where the strategic brilliance of high-value action verbs truly shines.
Okay, high-value action verbs.
If you want to navigate real-world dynamic conversations without freezing up, you need to deeply internalize the big 3.
The big 3. I assume we are talking about make, take, and have.
Make, take, and have. These verbs are the Swiss Army knives of the English language. We call their combinations collocations, words that naturally and frequently occur together.
Let's do a rapid-fire exploration of collocations to show just how incredibly versatile these three simple tools are. I'll start with make. As a learner, you do not need to hunt for highly specific verbs to describe daily actions. You just use make.
Right?
In the morning, you make breakfast, you make coffee. At work, if things go wrong, you make a mistake. If you want to see someone, you make time for a friend, you make a decision, you make a phone call.
Notice how inherently physical and active those constructions are. It's one verb doing the job of 10. Now let's pivot to take. The utility is endless. You wake up and take a shower. You are tired, so you take a break.
Take a break, yeah.
You leave, so you say take care. You tell someone not to rush, so you say take your time. You take a photo, you take a seat, you take notes.
And have, the great equalizer. You don't consume food, you have lunch. You don't attend a scheduled gathering. You have a meeting. You have fun. You have a conversation. You have a problem. You have an idea.
I want the listener to actively participate right now. We are going to do a quick shadowing exercise to build that physical muscle memory we talked about earlier.
Oh, perfect.
I am going to say a natural chunk using one of these high-value verbs, and I want you, the listener, to repeat it out loud immediately after me. Don't overthink the grammar, just mimic the intonation and the physical flow. Ready?
Ready.
I always make time for coffee.
I always make time for coffee.
Let's take a short break.
Let's take a short break.
We need to have a meeting tomorrow.
We need to have a meeting tomorrow.
Excellent. The neurological benefit of practicing entire chunks like have a meeting tomorrow is that you are absorbing the grammatical syntax intuitively.
You're not doing the math in your head.
Right. You are not manually calculating that have must be followed by an indefinite article a and then a singular noun. Your articulatory loop just memorizes the melody of the phrase. It just sounds right to your brain.
And internalizing these chunks completely transforms how a learner navigates high-stress environments, like travel or social networking. Let's look at traveling. People buy these massive phrase books with 500 highly specific questions for every possible emergency.
Which you'll never remember when you're stressed.
Exactly. But in reality, if you're navigating an airport, a train station, or a hotel reception, you basically only need two structural pillars. Excuse me, where is, and I have...
Basically, excuse me, where is the gate? Where is the taxi stand? Where is the bathroom? And then I have a reservation, I have a ticket, I have a problem. With those two simple blocks and a handful of nouns, you can navigate 95% of logistical travel situations.
And this principle applies directly to social settings as well. If you are at a dinner party with English speakers, you do not need to suddenly become a philosopher to participate. People get so caught up in trying to sound intellectually impressive.
Yes. The desire to sound sophisticated is often the very thing that ruins the communication.
I see this all the time. A learner thinks that when they take a bite of food at a dinner party, they need to say something like, the flavor profile of this dish is truly delectable and exquisite.
Nobody talks like that.
But that sounds incredibly unnatural and bizarre in casual conversation. The native speaker next to them is just going to say, wow, this is delicious. Or even simpler, this is really good.
That is such a vital realization. Simple is actually sophisticated when it is delivered with confidence and accurate rhythm. True communicative mastery is not the ability to use complex words. It is the ability to convey complex ideas using simple, accessible language.
That's a great way to put it.
But acknowledging this brings us to what is arguably the most destructive psychological trap in the entire language learning journey. It is what we call mistake number 1, the syndrome of the silent learner.
The silent learner. Let me describe this persona because I know so many people who fit this description perfectly.
We all do.
This is the highly dedicated individual who reads English novels, who watches hours of English Netflix with the subtitles on, who crushes their Duolingo streak every single day, and who might even write flawlessly grammatical entries in an English journal. But they never, ever, under any circumstances, speak out loud.
And if you ask them why they don't speak, they will invariably give you the exact same answer. They are waiting for a magical, hypothetical day in the future when they feel completely ready.
The myth of readiness.
Yes, they operate under the illusion that if they just memorize 500 more words, or if they just master the past perfect continuous tense, then a switch will flip and they will be perfectly equipped to converse with a native speaker without making a single error.
But the reality is, that day of perfect readiness never arrives. Because, as we established with the toolbox and the driving analogies, speaking is a dynamic physical motor skill. It is not a static knowledge test.
You can't read your way into speaking.
You cannot learn to swim by reading a physics book about water displacement. You have to get in the pool.
Exactly. The fear of negative evaluation paralyzes them. So the practical question becomes, how does the silent learner break this paralysis? Especially if they live in a non-English speaking country and they don't have a built-in conversation partner.
That is the big hurdle. How do you practice output when there is literally no one to talk to?
The solution is to utilize your Broca's area, the part of the brain responsible for speech production, by narrating your own life out loud. You start doing this immediately.
That's
Today,
narrating your life.
when you are alone in your apartment, you turn your internal monologue into an external English dialogue. As you walk around, you vocalize your actions. I am walking into the kitchen. I am opening the fridge. I am pouring water. I am making coffee. I am feeling a bit stressed about my deadline.
It feels incredibly strange at first. You feel a bit foolish talking to an empty room.
You absolutely feel foolish, but mechanically, it is invaluable. Your vocal cords are vibrating in English. Your jaw and tongue are navigating the phonetic transitions. You are forcing your brain to retrieve words in real time. But you're doing it in a completely sterile, safe environment with zero social pressure and zero fear of judgment. You are paving the neural canyon.
I think narrating your life is a profoundly powerful tool. But we have to be completely honest with the listener here. When you start narrating your life, or when you finally take the leap and engage in a real conversation at that cafe, things are going to go wrong.
Oh, invariably.
The grammar engine will stall.
Yeah.
You'll use the wrong tense.
Yeah.
A weird, incorrect word will slip out.
It is not just possible. It is an absolute, unavoidable biological certainty. You will make mistakes.
So how should a learner cognitively and emotionally handle these inevitable errors? Because for a massive percentage of adult learners, making a grammatical mistake in front of someone else feels like a catastrophic failure. It triggers a really deep sense of shame.
Overcoming that shame requires a complete, radical reframing of what a mistake actually represents. Our school systems have conditioned us to view mistakes as penalties red ink on a test paper, evidence of our inadequacy.
Right, bad grades.
But in the realm of language acquisition, a mistake is not an enemy. A mistake is highly specific, highly valuable data. A mistake is a teacher pointing a laser pointer directly at the exact concept you are ready to learn next.
A mistake is a teacher. Walk me through how that reframing works in real time.
Let's say you're at that networking event and you excitedly tell someone, I go to work yesterday and I see my boss. The person understands you, but internally you instantly realize your error. Wait, yesterday's in the past. I used the present tense, go and see. I should have used went and saw.
You feel that hot flash of embarrassment.
Yes, but harness that feeling. That mistake just provided you with a hyper-personalized lesson. It highlighted a specific gap in your procedural memory. Because you felt that slight embarrassment, your amygdala tagged that memory as important.
So the emotion makes it stick.
Exactly. The next time you begin a sentence with yesterday, your brain will flag that previous mistake, pause for a microsecond, and correct the trajectory to went. If you had remained a silent learner and never opened your mouth, you never would have generated the data necessary to find and fix that gap.
And wait, here is where the psychology of this gets really interesting. We place native speakers on this absurd, impossible pedestal. As learners, we assume that Americans, Brits, Australians, or Canadians are walking grammar dictionaries who speak with flawless, crystalline perfection 100% of the time.
It's hilarious that we think that.
But if you actually record a casual conversation between two native speakers and transcribe it, it is shockingly messy.
Oh, it is wonderfully, chaotically messy. If you study conversational analysis, you will see that native speakers utilize what linguists call disfluencies constantly. We say, and, multiple times a minute.
All the time.
We completely forget the noun we're looking for. We'll start a sentence with one grammatical structure, hit a mental roadblock, abandon the sentence entirely, and start a new one. We use objectively incorrect grammar for stylistic effect. We trail off into absolute silence.
Exactly. The myth of native perfection is a toxic illusion. We need to completely eradicate the goal of perfection and replace it with the true goal of language, which is connection.
Connection, yes.
Did the person across from you understand your intent? Did you manage to share a quick laugh? Did you successfully order the right type of coffee? If the answer is yes, then the communication was a 100% success, regardless of whether the syntax was a little fractured.
Connection over perfection. That is the ultimate mantra. And if you can deeply internalize that mantra, and if you commit to your 15-minute daily routine of narrating your blocks, the The compounding results are genuinely spectacular.
Let's map out that long-term trajectory for the listener, because we all need a horizon to aim for. If a listener starts this exact routine tomorrow morning, what biological and linguistic changes are they going to notice at, say, the 3-month mark?
At 3 months of highly consistent, low-intensity daily practice, you cross the first major threshold. The most obvious change is that your speaking speed naturally increases.
Because the pathways are carved.
Exactly. The neural canyon is getting deeper. You are no longer spending precious working memory translating from your mother tongue. The core English blocks are firing directly. But the hidden and perhaps more exciting benefit at 3 months is that your listening comprehension will absolutely skyrocket.
That is fascinating. Why does practicing output drastically improve your input comprehension?
Because when you deeply physically own those 300 to 500 core words, your auditory processing centers recognize them instantaneously, even when they're buried in a stream of incredibly fast, connected native speech.
You pick them out of the noise.
Right. Your brain no longer has to buffer to decode the basic structural words, which means your cognitive energy is freed up to focus on understanding the overall meaning of the sentence.
You stop translating the individual words, and you just absorb the underlying concept. Okay, so that is 3 months. What happens if you maintain the habit? What happens when we hit the 6 to 12-month horizon?
That is when you encounter the holy grail of language learning. You hit what we call the fluency breakthrough.
The fluency breakthrough sounds epic.
It is a very strange, almost magical psychological shift. It's the moment when English stops feeling like a heavy foreign object that you are consciously carrying around in your brain, and it integrates into your identity. You might wake up one morning and realize, with a shock, you just had an entire dream in English.
Oh, wow.
Or you accidentally drop a plate in the kitchen, and your reflex is to swear in English instead of your native language.
Because the pathway is now faster and more accessible than the native pathway for that specific context, you actually begin thinking in English.
Yes, and this breakthrough is heavily supported by the linguistic theories of Stephen Krashen, specifically his concept of comprehensible input, or what we often call learning in the Goldilocks zone.
Comprehensible input. This is the idea that we acquire language best when we are exposed to messages that are just slightly above our current level of competence. The I+1 theory. Not too easy, not too frustratingly hard, just right.
Exactly. When you truly own those 1,000 core words, you have effectively unlocked the entire world of comprehensible input. Almost any casual podcast, YouTube vlog, or daily conversation now falls perfectly into your Goldilocks zone. You recognize 90% of the structure, which means you intimately understand the context.
And because the context is so clear, when that 10% of unknown exotic vocabulary pops up, your brain doesn't panic. You don't need to pause and open a dictionary. You simply deduce the meaning of the new word based on the incredibly solid foundation of the core words surrounding it.
Precisely. It triggers what I call the snowball effect. Imagine you have a small, incredibly dense, solid snowball that is your deeply owned core vocabulary. If you roll that snowball down a hill covered in fresh snow, which represents the immersion of daily life, it automatically, effortlessly picks up more mass.
It grows organic.
Eventually, it gathers so much momentum that it rolls entirely by itself. At that point, you cease studying English in the traditional sense. You transition into simply living your life in English, and your advanced vocabulary expands passively and continuously.
This self-rolling snowball of language acquisition, I think that is the perfect, enduring image to encapsulate everything we have explored today. We have covered a truly massive amount of neurological and linguistic ground in this deep dive.
We really have.
We thoroughly dismantled the toxic myth that you need to swallow a 10,000-word dictionary to be considered fluent. We explored the statistical reality that just 300 to 1,000 deeply owned core words cover the vast majority of human interaction.
We engineered the four-step framework right. Filtering for personalized relevance, cementing words in contextual sentences, combining those blocks, and anchoring them in episodic memory through your weekly life story.
We took a hard look at the neuroscience of habit formation, proving why the 15-minute daily routine leveraging the spacing effect and dopamine rewards carves permanent fluency pathways far better than marathon study sessions.
So much better.
We unlocked the power of make, take, have. We addressed the psychological paralysis of the silent learner, and we completely reframed mistakes from sources of shame into our most valuable teachers.
It represents a total paradigm shift in how an adult brain can approach language. But, as we established early on with the toolbox analogy, deeply understanding the theory of a hammer does not build the house. Action is required.
Exactly. The knowledge is useless without execution. So we are not going to leave you floating in theory. We're going to equip you with a highly specific, actionable, step-by-step, 7-day speaking challenge.
Yes, the 7-day challenge.
This protocol is synthesized directly from the neurological principles we just discussed. I want you, the listener, to commit to executing this specific sequence for the next 7 days.
It requires minimal time, perhaps 10 minutes a day, but the compound cognitive effect of doing this sequentially is profound.
Here is your blueprint for the 7-day challenge. Let's start with day 1. Your goal is pure, stress-free immersion. Find a short piece of English audio, a 5-minute segment of an audio deep dive, or a YouTube video. Put your pen down. Do not take notes. Simply listen for the overarching narrative. Let the rhythm and intonation wash over you and allow your brain to acclimate to the speed.
Just feel the language.
Okay.
Then, day 2, we introduce active hunting, replay that exact same 5-minute audio. This time, grab a notebook. You are listening specifically to extract 8 highly useful chunks. Do not write down isolated vocabulary words. You're hunting for short, functional phrases. Make time for, in my experience, what that means is...
Day 3. We activate the motor skills. Take your list of 8 chunks. Play the audio, pause it after the speaker uses the phrase, and shatter them out loud. Try to perfectly mimic their pacing, their stress, and their tone. Feel the physical mechanics of those phrases in your vocal tract.
Day 4. We move to forced production. Put your notebook away. Stand in your room and talk out loud about the general topic of that audio for exactly 2 minutes. Set a timer. The rule is you cannot stop speaking. If you forget a word, describe it. If you butcher the grammar, ignore it and push forward. You are training resilience and fluid production.
Day 5. We introduce the feedback loop. Perform the same 2-minute unscripted talk, but hit record on your phone's voice memo app. Afterward, listen back. Do not judge your accent. Listen analytically. Notice where the engine stalls. Say to yourself, I hesitated for 3 seconds there because I haven't automated the past tense of that verb. You are gathering data.
Day 6. The simplification protocol. Retell the exact same 2-minute story, but deliberately restrict yourself. Strip away any attempts at complex, fancy vocabulary. Force yourself to convey the entire message using only your most basic, deeply owned core blocks. Prove to yourself that simple is sophisticated.
And finally, day 7, the final integration. Take those original chunks from day 2 and use them in a dynamic setting. Hold the mini conversation. If you have a friend, use them. If you are alone, talk to the mirror, answering imaginary questions. Integrate the chunks organically into your spontaneous speech.
If you commit to that 7-day challenge, you are no longer just staring at the forest. You are actively walking into it. You are snapping the branches, you are trampling the grass, and you are carving the foundational dirt path of your fluency.
Quality over infinite quantity. Contextual, living language over sterile, isolated memorization. Small, daily consistency over massive, exhausting intensity. And please remember the ultimate golden rule of this entire journey. Do not compare your day 30 to a native speaker's day 10,000.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Or not compare your progress to the seemingly perfect bilingual person on social media.
Yeah.
The only valid comparison is against yourself. Compare yourself strictly to who you were yesterday. If you confidently own just one more conversational chunk today than you did 24 hours ago, you are undeniably winning the game.
Neural pathways take time to deepen. Progress is a quiet, incremental, daily phenomenon. Trust the process and just keep the water flowing over the stone.
We truly hope this deep dive has fundamentally shifted your perspective and removed some of the heavy anxiety from your language journey. If you found this framework valuable, please take a quick second to subscribe, leave a like, and we would absolutely love it if you interacted with us by commenting below. Write just one simple sentence about your day in English. Tell us what you did, focusing entirely on using your basic, powerful core words.
We read every single one of them, and seeing you apply the building blocks is the absolute best part of doing this show.
Now, as you step away from this audio and go out into your day, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to process. If mastering a mere 300 foundational building blocks can unlock 65% of something as infinitely complex as an entirely foreign language, what other massive, seemingly insurmountable challenges in your life, your career, your relationships could be completely conquered if you simply slowed down, ignored the overwhelming noise, and ruthlessly mastered the basic fundamentals? Keep building your path. We will see you next time.